When looking for the king of podcasts, you're at the wrong channel.
Well, excuse me!
Looking for good ideas for life? You're far from good hands.
Hey, bud, what's your problem?
If you think the listener is always right, you're far from the right place.
Out of order! Even in the future, nothing works!
Hosted by a Northeasterner by birth, but a rebel by choice.
Are you threatening me?
If you want a host that floats between love and madness,
and we know the night is always gonna be here anyway. Thinking of you's working up my appetite. Looking forward to a little afternoon delight.
then play on and listen to Crazy Train Radio.
All right, guys, listen to the blues riff and B. Watch me for the changes and try and keep up, okay?
Warning, creators of this game do understand the subject matter may be offensive to some, but they do honor the families and people that have been affected by these real-life tragedies that these individuals have caused. Want to play a game?
Oh, yeah!
Lover of true crime?
Yes, yes, yes.
Well, we got an interesting game for you to check out.
Wow.
With the mashup of influences such as horror movies, collecting cards, and RPGs.
What?
Led to giving birth to an incredible creation of this game, Killers, the card game.
You are all I killed with now.
This game is a collectible trading card game featuring some of the most infamous killers, with tidbits of trivia on the back of each card to help you learn some insight to each criminal.
Who the hell are you?
Let's not forget, during the game, cops will be chasing you and these criminals.
I'm a cop, you idiot!
However, check out their website listed through all social media today, which can be found under Killers, the card game.
Am I on the internet?
I want to play a game.
Hey folks, it's your least favorite host in the podcast world, Croc, Jonathan Steele. And boy, do we have a good one for you today.
Hi, I'm Adrian Paul, and you're listening to Crazy Train Radio.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, childrens of all ages. This next guest is an Englishman that's also half Irish, has done many things throughout his career. He has over 30 film credits and over 200 hours of TV, whether he's playing a Russian dancer on a US TV show, such as the Colbys, but he's best known as Duncan Macleod on the Highlander series. Mr. Adrian Paul. How you doing, sir?
Good, how you doing? I want to correct you on something. I'm only a quarter Irish. As my grandfather was part Irish, so I didn't really go the halfway. I'm more half Italian than anything else.
Okay, because we'll leave the half jokes alone. As much as I usually go there, we'll leave those alone. But you were coming off a weekend with the sword experience. So before we jump into the acting, the TV, all that stuff, what do you teach during your seminars, and what's that all about?
Well, it depends on which one we have, because Sword Experience started in 2016 by about just giving people the experience of what it was like to actually wield a sword and the techniques, etc. And so it's developed into an academy program where we literally go through entire basics like the pronated, supernated versions, the strength of the swing, the targeting areas, the footwork, all that type of stuff, to our elite events, which incorporate all of that, but also filming a story so that you actually put into process what you've learned earlier in the day or earlier in the 2-day weekend, because sometimes we actually have 2-day events, which actually we have some coming up now. And, you get a story to play out. You get to be an actor, to be a star in your own TV show or film for a day. We film it, we photograph it, we edit it, and you get the training and you get all of that as well as more in a day. So it's a 6-hour or 2 4-hour days event.
Well, just so people are aware, and I think most of the fan base would notice when they hear our conversation, but I want to put out there that you have studied a range of martial arts, such as Taekwondo, Chalit Fu, a version of Kung Fu. You've been mentioned in and featured as well in Impact 3 times, Inside Kung Fu, Karate International, Martial Arts Insider magazines, just to name a few. So, and you've been training since the 80s, and studying different disciplines is it's such a unique experience. And I noticed from learning from a gentleman, in terms of who's become a buddy for me, and almost I call him my sensei because he does a little of everything. Anthony DeLongis, who's a weapons expert as well. And, when I was out there recently, I actually started learning to knife throw and different things. But you do have the credibility besides the swords, because most people think, oh, he just did it on Highlander and whatever. But you do have the background to be able to teach and show experiences and do the day of filming and such. So I wanted to throw that credibility out there.
I mean, I've done martial arts for many years now. I've lost count now. But yes, I remember I've also worked with a lot of great people, and I think I've learned as a teacher, you really get a lot of your experience, and you realize your own mistakes when you watch other people, or when you teach other people, or when you work with other people. So, I've worked with like Anthony DeLongis, you mentioned, Mark Makita. There are a number of martial art instructors that I've worked with in the Sword Experience, as well as having done Choi Li Fut, Sun Yin Kin, Hungar Kung Fu, Shaolin Kung Fu. Worked with the ice-breaking champion of the world, Richard Faraci, who now has passed on, who was a karate-based guy. So, I mean, a variety. But the one interesting thing is the human body only works a certain way, only moves a certain way. And really, it's what you are able to manipulate in your own way to make the technique work. So sometimes in a karate, it's using a break with the hands. With the Kung Fu, it's manipulating it slightly differently. But the arm's only going to move a certain way. The leg is only going to move a certain way. So in reality, it's just what is effective in what situation. And that's one of the things we talk about in the Sword Experience, is like, you can do this here, but when you're in a real situation, you've got to apply real techniques, and it changes. So you adapt. One of the biggest things that I tell people is a quote that I saw a while back, and I used it in my academy events and in my league events. I say to people, you can't come into this looking at it saying, well, my martial arts says I should do this, because you might not be in the right situation to do that. Mark Makita, who's a grandmaster in the Kali world, he teaches a lot of the people from the Dan in the Sano school, and they come in and they do their techniques, and their techniques don't work. And they're like, why aren't they working? They said, because I know what you're going to do, so I'm adapting to that. And so the quote is, for a species to survive, it has nothing to do with its intelligence or strength. but with this ability to adapt. So that applies also to martial arts and anything else you do. You have to be able to adapt, otherwise you won't survive.
And it's funny, when I was out at Anthony's ranch and he was giving me kind of a one-on-one while we were spending a few hours there, he made that same point. And as far as being able to adapt when we were talking with the whip and such, but obviously with the many different disciplines that you've trained under and teach as well, each discipline has a different philosophy, I'll say. And is there a different or a specific discipline you enjoy working with the most?
I love movement, and that's probably why swords were very comfortable for me, because you have to be able to move in a sword fight rather than stay still. You look at all the HEMA, which is historical European martial art manuals of the guys that actually did these fights. They never did it linearly. They worked around the line of attack. They worked around the footwork, and they survived because they were able to utilize their feet. So for me, a martial art like Kung Fu, like anything that has certain circular movement to it, I feel more comfortable with because I can understand it a little bit better.
Absolutely. And obviously we can break that stuff down all day, but we don't have the time to do so. But how did one go from working in banks and pharmaceutical types of work to the entertainment field?
Well, let me put it like this. Going from a bank, the thing is, I tell people, when you're a kid, your dreams will never come true. People look at me and they go, what do you mean? What do you mean? And I said, but not the way you thought they would. Because everything you do along the way is a choice. You have a decision to make at a certain point, whether you go into acting, whether you go into banking, whether you go into this, is because of a choice you had to make at that particular time. Everything I've done in my life, I worked as a pharmaceutical, I worked in a pharmaceutical company doing cost and pricing, which is all the costs and the prices and the input forms for the computers when computers were really basic. I worked in an employment agency. I worked in these things. One thing took me from one to the next. How I got into the entertainment world, should I say, was from a girlfriend who put me into a competition to be a male model, and I won it with a contract with an agency, and that's kind of started me on that world. But then I kind of realized this was kind of what I wanted to do, be more in the arts rather than the office world. And so I started pursuing that. I started taking dance lessons, acting lessons, etc. And from that point, I came to the States, and that's really when I got the bug of knowing that's exactly what I wanted to do. And I think everybody gets that at some point, whether you're going to be a soccer player, whether you're going to be a bank teller, whether you're going to be an accountant, you go, this is what I want to do. I really want to do this. And I don't think you should ever do anything that doesn't make you happy, because otherwise you'll have a horrible existence.
Isn't that the truth? But, you're one of the few British actors I've spoken with over the 11 years here that we're getting ready to hit. And so I don't totally understand the mindset over there compared to people growing up in the States and stuff. But what did your family think of you saying, hey, I'm going to pursue this entertainment field instead of having, like you were saying, your traditional 9-to-5 job, whether it's a teller or the pharmaceutical imports and just everything like that?
My family were very supportive of everything I did. They definitely just let me do what I wanted to do, because I think they got to the point saying, go pursue what you want to pursue, do it, but be aware of this or this or this, because it comes from experience. The same thing as I tell my kids. I told my daughter this last night, actually this morning, I don't know. I said to her, things are going to change as you go older, and be aware of these other things, these other factors. You might want to go along this road. There are other people or other things that are going to come along, things you have to take into account. And my mother was very down to earth. She was Italian, but very practical as well. And I remember the first time I got the Colbys, which was an American TV series. I got 22 on air, which is now you really don't get that anymore. And I was earning, I was going to earn a nice. It wasn't a lot net for now's wages. It was nothing, it was a pittance really, but it was a constant gig. It was my first gig, and I called her up and said, "Mom, I've got this thing. And the only thing she said to me, she says, "You be careful. You make sure that you do this and do this and do this." She was very like, "Yes, there's all that flowery stuff, but make sure that you understand that there are other things you have to really look out for." So they let me do what I wanted to do, but they were also saying, "Okay, but be aware of this," and gave me advice along the way.
That's good to have. And you mentioned you have a daughter, but I know you have 3 children.
Mm-hmm.
So how would you feel now if your kid said, "Hey, Dad, I want to look into getting into entertainment and such," because it's such a unique and strange business in a good way, but you're also constantly being told no. So with your years of experience, how you put all this together and say, you give it a shot, kids, or how do you?
I would never stop my kids from doing what they want in that respect, because when you have a passion, you can teach technique in anything you want. You can teach technique in soccer and sword, but you can't teach passion. And so, if they have a passion for it, I would say, go ahead, do it. But like my mom would say, be aware of this. Here's this pitfall. Here's that pitfall. The entertainment business is not in a good way. It's a horrible business in a sense, in many respects, because you are constantly being told no. You are constantly being used. You are constantly a product. And that's one of the things I would tell my kids. I said, be aware that you are only as good as your last movie or your last TV gig. It's the only thing you have to remember, because somebody else, an agent and a manager, is not there for you most of the time. They're there to make their own business work, to be the head of their agency. So if they find a product that is going to make them more money, make them better results, they're going to concentrate on that product rather than on you. And so that's something you have to really be very aware of, that you are a product. And in today's market, it's even more so. Your Instagrams, your Facebook and your Twitter and your all the different social media apps. If you are popular in that, you have a much better chance today with producers and companies to land that role. Doesn't mean that you'll be successful, but you'll get the opportunity to do it because you are a product that is sellable.
Exactly. And the big thing too, from when you were coming up in the 80s and such, was I always heard, and everybody I've spoken to said, it was either you did TV or movies. There wasn't really much crossover, where now there are a lot of people that do crossover work, and whether it's commercial, TV, movies, they all interchange. When did you notice that start to change from your perspective?
Early 2000s. But basically, back in the 80s, film actors didn't do TV. They really were not. There was a stigma, especially in England as well, that we don't do TV. So eventually, slowly in the 90s, that started to change a little bit. Then when the streaming platforms, the Netflix and the Amazons, etc., started coming to the forefront in the mid-2000s and onwards, the platforms changed, the delivery changed, the syndicated market, which was what the Highlander was on, which basically meant they sold it to different markets and
syndication and such.
Right, that disappeared. Right by 2000, 2001, I was literally in the middle of it. I had a series called Tracker. The syndicated market literally died right in the middle, and Tracker just died. So they couldn't sell it. The market is constantly changing, more so now. And I think there is a difference. I mean, if Highlander had a social media outlet, I'd be surprised if it wasn't a mega hit, because it was a hit back then, but with social media, it would have reached so many more people and it had a much larger following. But, it's different. It's just a different market.
Yeah, and I talked to a lot of musicians too, and it's the same thing where the goal would be doing albums and such, but now it's, like you said, the different streaming points on that side of the business world as well. But is there a preference in medium you would enjoy working, whether it's TV, film, stage? Is there something you prefer doing, or is it, if it's a good gig, I'm going to take it?
If it's a good gig, I'm going to take it. It's really, there is really no delineation now from that. It's interesting when you're a young actor or an actor that doesn't have any responsibilities or commitments for other people, your focus is your career, your career, your career. When you have kids, that changes. It doesn't. It's different. So today, I'm not. My career is my career. It is what it is. You have to adapt, which is what I'm doing. I have a film production company in Hungary. We have a variety of different things we're working on. But you just have to, as I said, adapt. But the focus now is to make my kids go through college and give them a good kick up, leg up, should I say? So your focus changes a little bit as you get older.
Absolutely, and that's real life. But you mentioned, or we both mentioned, the Colbys, and obviously you weren't there the whole series, but what was your experience with Charlton Heston?
Chuck, as everybody called him. He was always nice to me. He was the first person I ever met when I walked onto the stages on Melrose, and he said to me, "Oh, hello, so it's nice to see you. We've been waiting to meet you." And I'm like, "What, you're waiting to meet me? You're Moses, for goodness sake, like, look in the mirror, dude." But the reason was because they've been trying to cast this role for a while. So he was always kind to me. But, like any other lead in a series, he had his things. He had his way of working. There were times when he'd reprimand other cast members because he was the name and the star of the show, in a sense. And he had the ability to change things, which are not so apparent these days. For instance, if you go on a set these days, you want to change a line, it's going to go up through the chain of command. The writers have got to make sure that the network's going to tell whether you said and or. Back then, there was one scene, for instance, that I was jumping out of a balcony, out of a four-story window, and I land, and I kind of roll and walk off. And the line was that he said, "Oh, thank God you're a ballet dancer. If you could have gotten hurt." And he looked at it and said, "That's ridiculous. He's just jumped out of 6 stories. I'm not saying that line. I'm going to give that to Tracy Scoggins," which he did. And so she got the line and said the line. So he had the ability to do that. And but as I said, I always had a pleasant experience with him.
Yeah, and like you said, he was Moses. He
was Moses. His politics were not to my liking, but that's I'm not there for politics. I'm there to act, and so that's that was part of it.
Yeah, that's what you were there for. That's what you're hired for.
Exactly,
that's what we're going with. But obviously, like I said, most people would, when you say your name, they think of Highlander and the movies and the series, everything else like that. And a little birdie, because we know everything online is true, mentioned that you were cast just a few days before filming started. So was most of your projects that crazy, where they said, "Hey, guess what? On a Thursday, hey, you got the gig. We need you on Monday"?
Yeah, a lot of the time that does happen. Most of the guest star casts are cast like the week before, so you have very little time to kind of get into it. Sometimes in some films or notable actors, they're doing deals, 6 months, a year ahead of time, so you get time to actually work on it. And I've done projects where I've had that time to do it, but a lot of the time it's the very last very last moment. It's and Highlander was no exception.
Well, obviously, you were with the series and everything for a good chunk of time, which not many actors can say they have a role that they are known for. Or I should say, most working actors would love to be able to have that. So when did you feel that Duncan was yours, truly yours? But also, what kind of influences would you say playing Duncan has given you, whether it's what you're doing now with the seminars or other aspects of life?
Well, as I said, you make a decision at a certain time along your career, along your path in life, and that informs what else you have to do in the rest of your life. Highlander, Duncan Macleod, the funny thing was that originally I was supposed to be Connor Macleod. This is no secret, everybody's heard this online, but I was very happy that it was going to be another character so that I could kind of develop that myself rather than following somebody else and be compared to, well, this Connor Macleod is different than that Connor Macleod, which I'd done before. And so it's very difficult for the audience member to sort of now say, okay, there's this one guy and then there's this guy or this girl and this girl. They played the same role. Which one do I like? Which one is better? And I still get it from people. Well, I like you better. I like Christoph better. I like, So, and that's personal preference. But I was lucky because I was able to create a character directly from scratch. But I don't think it was until probably the second season really that you kind of, got to know that this was kind of your character. And I learned a lot from playing Duncan Macleod, a lot about English history, about European history, because I would research some of the flashbacks that we would do. I learned a lot about human nature. We had a fantastic showrunner, David Abramowitz, who, was always trying to explore the human condition. And so we were looking at it from the point of view of okay, what would a guy do? Now, if you were 100 years old or 200 years old, 300 years, how would you feel? How would that make your friends feel? How would your relationships behave? So we were always trying to develop that. And as you do that, you kind of start looking at it from a different point of view, looking at life from a different point of view. What would it be like if you were a Moor? How would you feel about that? I don't know. I mean, people have asked me that. Would I like it? Maybe, maybe not. So it's taught me, and it taught me a lot about. It was one of the reasons I started my own charity for kids. Highlander gave me that. It was, I saw the effects celebrities had on kids, and I thought, yeah, that's what I want to give back. That's what I want to do. I'd always thought I was going to do something with kids, but I didn't know what it was going to be. And this was the push. It gave me that moment of saying, oh yeah, this is what it should be. So Highlander gave me a lot of different things. It allowed me to direct. It gave me the ideas. Understanding how to produce was what Highlander gave me as well, because producing is not just getting money and delivering the script. But producing is managing all the talent and the things around it. How do you manage that? How do you manage the ups and downs? That's producing. And I learned a lot about that. I learned ways to actually talk to people and get things that I wanted instead of butting heads with them. I didn't learn it immediately. It took time. So I would. That's
with everything now.
Yeah, I mean, it takes time sometimes.
Well, I obviously got some more questions, but you mentioned about doing charity work for kids and stuff. So I think it's important to mention that because I did stuff for Children's Hospital of LA and stuff over the years with kids and illnesses and such. So what is your organization, or is there a specific organization you enjoy trying to help, whether it be St. Jude's or whoever?
Well, if people come to me, I make partner with them, but I have my own charity called Peace, Protect, Educate, Aid Children Every Day. That's been in operation since 1997. We're picking back up now. We have an interactive reading program because I also have a podcast that we have about 700 hours of podcasts that we've done on that. And it talks all about different charities from across the world, different organizations that are doing the same thing in different cities. But one of the things we found was that and in talking to different organizations, is how the grade 3 reading level in any state, in many states, is a basis on how many prisons they build. Because they figure out that if you have a below par average when you are in third grade, the likelihood is you're going to be disinterested, you're going to fall out of school and turn to a life of crime, and that's it. So they need more prisons, so they need less prisons. So they base their spending based on, and I'm thinking, well, kids need a better chance than that. So reading is a very simple thing, because reading gives you so many different things. It gives you the ability to understand signs. It gives you the ability to get a job. The ability to, so much knowledge is power. So to us, that's kind of important. And, if we've been able to help some kids move forward in that, that's why we've recreated this Kids Read to Lead program in the Peace Fund that we've now taken online, because the pandemic kind of stopped us just as we were launching it. We've launched it at several events, but pandemic stopped any personal touch, and now it's online. And we did the first just recently. We've got a couple more coming up.
Well, if people want to check that out, where can they check out the information to join virtually?
Peacefund.org is where you'll find the charity, and the information should be on there. And contact information is on that site.
Beautiful. Nothing wrong with helping the kids, that's for sure. Especially, like you said, trying to educate them and open many more doors for them.
I think most people don't understand how desperate this country could get, because the kids today are it's YouTube, etc., all that stuff. And I watched a video the other day where this kid was just telling a teacher what to do and how to go and do it. There's no respect. There's no nothing. And eventually that's going to be detrimental, because within the United States, they reckon between, I think it's 2025 or 2030, there's going to be something like, I think it was something like 120 million technical jobs, with only about 40 or 50 million people to be able to, that have the qualifications to fulfill them. So what are you going to do? You're going to have to import more people, or your technical ability is going to lessen, which means your GDP will go down. It's a whole process that needs to be addressed.
And like you said, as far as those videos are concerned that you're mentioning, it blows my mind, that lack of respect that we see, because if I ever thought about talking to my seniors or my adults or whoever, I would have been read between the eyes if I was shown any kind of disrespect like that. But
I mean, the fact is that hitting a child has proven to be not successful. Yet on the other side of it, there's got to be some level of understanding, which is harder to do when you have children, to spend the time to get them to understand how to behave correctly. Because if they go into school and they're going to be disrespectful to the teacher and not going to listen to the teacher, guess what? They're not going to want to do the math. They're not going to want to do the reading. They're not going to want to do any of that. What does that mean? Okay, I'll go and get myself a job on YouTube. Well, not everybody's going to be able to YouTube success. Not everybody's going to be on Instagram. Not everybody's going to be able to do that. So what else have you got? Where's your life going to go? My son wants to be a pro soccer player. He's pretty good, but that doesn't mean it's going to work. And I say to him, you got to do your math. You got to do your other stuff and get those grades up, because not only if you go into schools later on, when you go into colleges, which are important, more important these days, you go to college, you're a great soccer player, you're a great baseball player, you're a great football player, whatever. A lot of them won't take you if your grades are low, even if you do have that. So, and then what? Then what do? You can go and work in some, $15 an hour job, that'll be it.
Or here's the other thing with that mindset. Let's say he goes to school and all that fun stuff and becomes pro and becomes successful. What happens if he blows out a knee or something like that?
Well, it's not only that. I've told you.
You need something to fall back on.
But yes, and the fact that if you are successful, you've got to know what to do with the money. Because a lot of the time, you could be very successful and you earn yourself $1 million. Well, what are you going to do with it? $1 million is not going to last you. It'll disappear. What if you give it to the wrong person? What if you spend it on the wrong thing? You're not making it grow. 5 years later, you don't have that career. So now what? So you've got to know how to manage that money as well. So there's a lot of reasons why school is important and grades are important. I'm not a big proponent of college all the time. I never went to college. My wife was like, yes, college. But to a degree, I'm of the mindset that you learn all the things you need to learn. You can be successful if you're dedicated and hardworking in getting the level of expertise to learn, because that's what I feel that going to school a lot of the time is to get knowledge. Mm-hmm. It's not that you're better than anybody else. It's to get knowledge and how you process knowledge. You are being taught how to learn. So learning sword fighting, for instance, how do I need to do this, and this? Well, that also comes from school, because school teaches you need to have a structure. You need to have a discipline. So therefore, I apply that to whatever it is I'm going to do in life. Mm-hmm. So I don't think necessarily college is just the end all for everybody. It will work for the majority of people because a lot of jobs do require it. But sometimes it is not as important. And my wife will kill me if I say for hearing me say this, but I don't think it's as important. We won't tell absolutely everybody. Yeah, please.
Yeah, we won't tell your wife that. But a couple more Highlander questions, just because of the time. There was a story I heard, and like I said, everything online is true. But there was a story I heard that I guess it would have been second season or so, that there was a guy who may have stolen something, ran through the set, and you maybe held him down. So what actually happened there?
I was in my trailer and I start hearing this screaming outside, stop, and I open the door. As I open the door, this guy goes running past, and the first AD comes flying past him. So I went after him as well. And the first AD got him, I got him, we just put him down, pulled he had a screwdriver in his back pocket. He'd just stolen somebody's camcorder. And so we just held him down for a little bit while the police came. That was it.
Okay. But obviously during this series, it was like 119 episodes, something like that, where you actually had the opportunity to direct a couple episodes. So how much did that influence you in terms of doing what you're doing now with the production company and things like that?
Oh, a lot. I mean, the reason I wanted to direct and I asked to direct was I wanted to know more about the technical side of filmmaking. I wanted to learn what a director or a DP needed from an actor from the other side of the camera. So I learned that. And so today, I mean, I'm filming every 2 weeks pretty much right now on the Sword experience, because, and I write the scripts. I look at the structure, what shots I need to take. I shoot most of it. I have videographers as well that come on board. And then I spend time in the editing. I mean, with the amount of time we have, in the space of 6 hours, sometimes a little more, probably, let's say 8 hours, I put together a 3 to 5 minute piece that would normally take you a week to do. So it's very beneficial to have all that information. And the more you do it, the more you learn. Even now, I still have to understand more about aperture and lighting and ISO, etc. I mean, you don't necessarily have to know all of it, but it does help, because then when you work with other people, you kind of get what they're talking to you about. So it's been very beneficial, Highlander, in many senses, especially directing. And I have a film that I'm hoping to direct next year that I've been saying for about 5 years now. The funding looks like it should come through and stuff.
And kind of what you just said there reminds me of a saying I always use: jack of all trades, master of none. So last question for you. Obviously, the series and everything else has been widely popular, and many people don't realize that the production value was limited compared to other series and movies and everything else. So with that being said, or I should say, are you surprised that the popularity, even to this day, that it still has?
The funny thing is, production value is, I think, overrated a lot of the time. By that, I mean, I can put a camera in Paris, you got production value. I can put I can build a massive set, you got production value. We were lucky that we had Paris and Vancouver, so we were able to split between creative set designers and props makers, etc., who would create another world for us in Vancouver, and yet in Paris we were able to create something that was already there. We just had to light it slightly. You had amazing chateaus, amazing castles, amazing. You could just point the camera, and that's why Paris was so magical on the show, because it had history already imbued in it. It was just there, and that to me, I tell people when they're doing the sword experience, I say to them, you have to understand that when you go and see an action movie, it is great until the communication or the dialogue or the conversation stops between the characters during the action. You can see as many sort of explosions, as many special effects as you want. That's fantastic. But at the end of it, deep down, you'll go away feeling not satisfied. And I guarantee you've been to movies where you come out going, yeah, that was good. It was good, but it's missing something. And usually that's because within the action, the communication or the conversation between the characters has stopped, or it's been sidetracked by a piece of explosion. It's great to see those. Sometimes you just want mindless, TV or film, and that's great. And I love it too. But sometimes just, why do you think soaps do so well? They don't have explosions. They don't have visual effects. They just have people talking to each other. The relationships. It's why reality shows do so well, because we want to see what happens to the human condition. And I think that's partly why. Sorry. Okay.
True. I actually just got a text from a co-host who unfortunately got stuck in traffic, but he wanted to know, and we'll wrap here, Love Potion number 9 with a pre-famous Sandra Bullock. Do you have any good stories on her?
Yeah, she owes me a necklace.
I think she can afford you a necklace.
Yeah, it was funny because I had this quartz necklace, this thing that was on my chain on my neck, and actors, when they go on different location shoots, you're there on your own, so you bond with your fellow actors. A lot of time you go out to dinner, you go out to drinks, etc. And Tate Donovan's room was just down the hall, and Sandra Colbys said, let's go get Tate, and we're going, we'll go see what he's up to. We'll go out for dinner. So just as I get to his door, she jumps on my back and pushes me into the door slightly, and then my necklace breaks in half. She goes, oh, don't worry, I'll get you another one. But she never did. So, but the funny thing about Sandra, I love Sandra from the beginning. She was awesome. And she actually, I remember seeing her after the film. We were at a party in Beverly and La Brea somewhere. And we were in the back. She said, I've got this movie. And I said, yeah, I've got some stuff that's really happening as well. So yeah, it's called Demolition Man. It's with I want to say Stallone, yeah. And she said, I think it'll be pretty good. And I said, yeah. So that was the last time we really spoke. Was back then. So when we talked, it was many years ago. But I always liked her. She was a nice lady girl back then. I've always liked her work since.
Well, if people want to look at possibly signing up for a seminar near them, or possibly bringing a seminar in, or any of that stuff, where can people find that information?
Well, I'm actually going. I'm actually going to start doing also speaking engagements as well. But all my stuff usually goes through my management, or the easiest way to get to that is to go to the Sword Experience. The Sword Experience. I mean, I've got one coming up in Baltimore soon. I've got this week. I'm going to Phoenix. I've got Paris tour. I've got Knoxville, Ireland, England, Pittsburgh. Looking at Vancouver. We've got Sucon. We've got a lot of different stuff. So I travel everywhere. And contact at the Sword Experience or contact at Sword XP is the place where anybody can sort of reach out to us and see whether it would work or not for them.
On that note, Mr. Paul, thank you so much for the time.
You're very welcome. Hopefully you have a fabulous day, man.
Hey there, Friday fans. We know how much you enjoy the movies. Enjoy grabbing your Friday merchandise and interacting with the Friday family, whether it be at conventions or during our particular watch-alongs. Well, when you're looking to get yourself masks, why not check out our friends over at Camp Blood Customs out of New York State and order your specific custom mask from any of the films. All orders are made specifically. Your needs and wants are. Make sure you find Camp Blood Customs on Facebook, Instagram, and all over social media and order yours today.
Hey there, it's Alan Troutman, Tarman from Return of the Living Dead, and if there's anybody you should listen to, it's me, about listening to Crazy Train Radio. Go do it. Go away. Do it now.